All may be seated. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. You would agree that you and Ms. Sherling agreed to go to the country concert over going to Ms. Baker's candlelight visual. Is that correct?
Correct.
Now, at this concert that you went with Ms. Sherling, that you went with Ms. Sherling to, there was a total of 6 people. Is that correct?
Sounds accurate.
Okay. It was Ms. Sherling's mother and father. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. It was her neighbors, which was a guy and a girl couple.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this was a country concert at Turner Field.
Correct.
Okay. So you and Ms. Sherling left Athens when Ms. Baker is having a candlelight visual to travel to Atlanta to go to a country concert.
I don't remember where we left from. I don't recall that. But I do recall going to a concert, and it was in an open stadium, and you get to walk around and listen to country music.
You remember that, but you don't remember whether Ms. Baker told you she was going to be alone the day before she died.
I object to asked and answered.
Sustained.
Chris, the week before Tara died, there was an incident between you and her that jeopardized your relationship with her. Do you remember that?
I remember being asked about the question.
Okay. Do you remember the incident?
I remember nothing happening the week before, but I had answered a question to a detective, and I remember telling there was an incident that always stayed in the forefront of my mind that I realized that I had hurt her feelings, but I didn't realize at that time the question was the week before, because the incident that I explained happened months before.
All right, so your testimony today, Mr. Melton, is the incident that occurred before Ms. Baker died was actually an incident that occurred months before Ms. Baker died.
Where he had asked, he goes, has there ever been a time that you felt that something you had done jeopardized your relationship? I think that's close to accurate, but my answer that I gave was off the forefront of my mind that it had always stayed there, but it did not happen the week before. I had stated that in questioning, but it was not the week before.
I just want to make sure we're clear on the question that I asked, okay? The week before Ms. Baker's death, there was an incident between you and her that jeopardized you two's relationship.
No, sir.
This isn't the first time you've been asked that question, is it?
No, sir.
On June 20th, 2001, law enforcement asked you that question. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And your statement to law enforcement was, yes, I remember that incident. Is that correct?
No, I remember I started telling about an incident.
Your Honor, I would ask to play minute mark 621 through 650 of Defense Exhibit 43.
Any objection, Mr. Yeldon?
43 in evidence?
Correct. Well, we did this. We did the times. The timestamp is
That one time, well.
And forgive me if I didn't move to it.
It's not in evidence.
Please forgive me.
It is not in evidence. So is there an objection to, and we can talk about that later. Let's talk about the request that Mr. Cruz has just made. Do you have an objection to what he has just requested?
Just a foundation, Your Honor.
I will sustain that objection and allow you to lay a foundation.
Okay. And you've already stated that you remember talking to law enforcement about that. Is that right?
I do.
Okay. And you two specifically discussed the incident between you and Tara the week before she died. Is that right?
He asked the question, but I'm not hearing it correctly at the time. It was an incident that had happened in the past, but not the week before. But he does ask that question.
So let me do it this way. Did you admit to law enforcement that an incident occurred with you and Ms. Baker the week before her death?
I would have to say yes, but it wasn't accurate.
Well, we can't have it both ways. First, you said it was months ago.
I'm going to object about editorializing about the witness's answers.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
Sure.
Mr. Cruz, just stick to your question.
Yes, ma'am. Your original answer was that this incident was months ago. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. But your answer now is you do remember the incident the week before she passed away.
I remember the question he asked, and and what I had described did not happen the week before.
But you told law enforcement it happened the week before.
He asked the question, and I gave an answer, but it was not the week before.
My specific. Oh, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. My specific question is, did you tell law enforcement that the incident happened the week before her death?
He asked that question, and I did not say that it happened the week before. I went into an explanation of what, in my forefront of my mind, had at some point jeopardized our relationship.
Your Honor, I would renew my request to introduce minute marks 621 through 650 into evidence as a prior inconsistent statement.
Mr. Yalamanchili.
Well, there were a lot of questions. None of them had to do with the foundation for the exhibit, however, which was my objection.
I think that's correct. So I'll sustain the objection, allow you to lay a foundation, Mr. Cruz.
You haven't heard what's on this flash drive, have you?
On the flash drive?
Right. You haven't heard what's on this flash drive, correct?
I don't know what's on your flash drive.
Let me ask you this. Did the state play your interviews for you?
I have heard the interviews.
They played them for you?
I have heard the interviews.
Okay. So you're familiar with your interviews with law enforcement, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And you are familiar with the interview that took place where you discussed with law enforcement the incident that took place the week before her death, is that right?
Yes, I'm familiar with that question.
Okay. And the reason you're familiar with it is because you've heard the interview, correct?
Well, I'm familiar with the question from originally, plus after 25 years, I think it's fair to say that I need to hear what I said on recording.
So you would like to hear it to determine if it's a fair and accurate rendition of your statements to law enforcement on June 20th, 2001?
I would like to hear to see if it's accurate. I did not explain to them it did not happen the week before. I just went into an explanation of something that I was recollecting.
Okay. I'm going to allow you to hear what's on this flash drive, Defense Exhibit 43. Do we have headphones? Do we have headphones? We don't. Headphones. Your Honor, I would ask, and I apologize to everybody, I would ask that I have the opportunity to lay the proper foundation for this flash drive with Mr. Melton outside the presence of the jury.
All right, we will do that. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'll go into the jury room, don't discuss the case. We'll be with you shortly. You all may be seated. Thank you. So, Mr. Cruz, let me just make sure for the record, you are you trying to refresh this witness's record?
No, I am not. I am laying the foundation for impeachment. I just want to lay the foundation that he recognizes this exhibit. I think that's the only piece that's missing.
So are you trying to lay the foundation for a prior inconsistent statement?
Correct.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
May I, Your Honor?
You may.
Okay, thank you. Minute mark 6:13 through minute mark 6:49 for the purpose of laying the foundation for this audio recording.
Anybody now? No, even if another thing was issue, kind of we'll call it an issue until we hear from you, was brought up to us. Something to the effect that like a week prior to Tara's death, Tara had found out some information and could have maybe jeopardized y'all's relationship. Do you remember having a discussion? I think
something that she might have found at your apartment in Athens.
I think she went there to leave you a note or something.
Yeah, I know it was.
Okay. How about?
Did you have opportunity to hear that, Mr. Melton?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Is that you on the audio recording?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is the minute 6 minutes and 13 seconds to 6 minutes and 49 seconds? Is that an accurate? Is that an accurate portion of your conversation with law enforcement?
Yes.
Okay. You recognize this audio recording as the conversation you had with law enforcement on June 20th, 2001. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay. Does it sound like it's been altered in any way?
No.
Your Honor, I believe the proper foundation has been laid for the audio recording. I'd ask that the jury be allowed to come back in.
All right. Thank you. Mr. Yelmichili, do you have an objection?
I think at this point the foundation has been laid. However, I did not hear a prior inconsistent statement. It's exactly what Mr. Melton said, which is that he got asked the question and then he launched into an explanation of what happened without correcting the date. So there may be something beyond this that Mr. Cruz wants to play that shows the inconsistency, but I believe, as far as what I heard, Judge, it was exactly what Mr. Melton testified to, which is that, yes, in response to that question about a date certain, I started to launch into an explanation about the only incident that I could think of, but it is not actually from that date, and I didn't clarify that for law enforcement, which seems to be what happens on the recording, but obviously the court heard the recording as well and can draw its own conclusions.
Mr. Cruz, any response to Yelmichili's comments?
Absolutely. That's a misrepresentation. Law enforcement clearly asked him if he was aware of an incident that occurred the week before Tara's death, and Mr. Melton, before I cut the recording off, said, yes, I'm aware of that incident. My specific question to him was, Mr. Melton, was there incident? Well, my specific question to Mr. Melton was, Chris, the week before Tara died, there was an incident that upset her and jeopardized your relationship with her. Do you remember that? His first answer was no. It was months ago that it happened. And eventually we got to him saying, well, I just told law enforcement that it was. I confronted him with the statement, Your Honor, I would ask that I'm allowed to impeach Mr. Melton with a prior inconsistent statement, because Mr. Melton danced around the answer. He wouldn't give me a clean yes or no.
I'm going to ask you to play it again because I did not hear what you're articulating.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I'd like to hear it again, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Another thing was issue, kind of we'll call it an issue until we hear from you, was brought up to us. Something to the effect that like a week prior to Tara's death, Tara had found out some information that upset her and could have maybe jeopardized y'all's relationship. Do you remember having a discussion?
All right, thank you. That's what I thought I heard. So I think that we are at a moment of the interpretation of semantics.
Sure.
But I do think semantics matter
Yes,
in
ma'am.
this moment. And what the officer just said, which is why I needed you to repeat it, was that something happened the week before where Ms. Baker had learned of something. And that is a different set of words and a different phrase than what you're asking Mr. Melton. And so based on that recording and based on the questions that you are asking Mr. Melton, that's not a prior inconsistent statement. You certainly may continue questioning him, but that does not qualify as a prior inconsistent statement. If there's more context, for example, in that recording that supports the way that you have asked the question, we certainly can get into that. But this particular thread that you have played very specifically says when she learned of something, and that is different than what you've asked.
Yes, ma'am. That's fair. We could bring the jury out. I've played it. He's laid the foundation for the recording. I'll ask the appropriate question, and depending on his response, we'll take the next steps.
All right. You may bring the jury out. Thank you. Y'all may be seated. Thank you. Mr. Cruz?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Melton, do you recall law enforcement asking you that like a week prior to Tara's death, Tara had found out some information that upset her and could have maybe jeopardized your relationship? Do you remember having that discussion? Is that
Yes,
accurate?
they asked that question.
Sir?
Yes.
And you were told, I think she went there to leave you a note or something. Do you recall that?
I recall them saying yes.
Okay. And your response was, yeah, I know what it was.
Yes.
You'd agree that you never disclosed that information to law enforcement until you were asked about it 5 months after her death. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You never shared with law enforcement the issue that led to Miss Baker not spending Christmas of 2000 with you, did you? Or Christmas Eve. Let me use the right date. Christmas Eve of 2000 with you. Is that correct?
I believe we were together Christmas Eve.
Your testimony here today is that you and Miss Baker were together on Christmas Eve?
Portion of the day, I believe so.
You never shared with law enforcement the reason why Miss Baker did not spend New Year's with you, did you?
Tara did spend New Year's. She spent New Year's Eve with me into New Year's Day, yes.
You never shared with law enforcement the reason Miss Baker stopped calling you the week of December 27th to January 3rd despite being home. Is that correct?
What were the dates you just said?
December 27th to January 3rd, 2001.
I don't recall.
You never shared with law enforcement that Ms. Baker told you that she needed space to focus on her studies 2 weeks before she died, did you?
Are you asking me? I'm sorry.
Sure.
There's a lot of questions.
You would agree that you never shared with law enforcement that Ms. Baker told you that she needed space to focus on her studies 2 weeks before her death.
I'd agree.
And you also never shared with law enforcement that the day before Tara was murdered, that was the most that you two had spoken in the previous 2 months.
I don't know about that, no. As far as did I say, I'm sorry, repeat your question. I'll make sure I understand you correctly.
You would agree that you never shared with law enforcement that the day before Ms. Baker was murdered, that was the most that you two had spoken in the previous 2 months over the phone. I left that portion out, so please forgive me. Over the phone.
Okay. No, I don't believe that I discussed that with the police. I wasn't really aware.
Would you have any reason to disagree that before Ms. Baker died, others believed that it was clear that your relationship with Ms. Baker was over?
It wouldn't be apparent or aware to me, no.
Let's discuss your dating history with Ms. Baker. Is that fair?
Fair.
Okay. When you met Ms. Baker, you two were in Milledgeville. Is that right?
Correct.
You two were in college.
Correct.
Okay. And you were a pre-med major. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And pre-med majors are typically aiming for medical school.
Correct.
Okay. And Ms. Baker wanted to become a lawyer.
That's correct.
Eventually, Ms. Baker graduated from college. Is that right?
That's correct.
And she moved to Athens. Is that correct?
At some point, when she graduated, she moved home.
Yes, sir. But eventually she moved to Athens. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And you would agree after Ms. Baker moved to Athens, you followed her to Athens.
Correct.
Let me frame it this way. You didn't graduate from college. Is that correct? You didn't get your pre-med degree. Is that right?
That's correct.
Now, for your living arrangements in Athens, you rented a empty bedroom in Chase Guerin's apartment. Is that right?
Correct.
And Chase is someone you actually met through Tara.
Correct.
And for work, while you were staying in Athens, you were driving back and forth daily to Loganville from Athens, Georgia to Loganville and back. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
And you moved to Athens specifically to be close to Ms. Baker. Is that right?
Correct.
And when you first moved to Athens, is it fair to say that you and Ms. Baker would spend in a 7-day week, you guys would be together about 4 or 5 days?
That's correct. That's pre-law school.
That's pre-law school?
That's before we spent that much time before she started getting in law school and getting more busy. Yeah.
So first semester of law school, you weren't spending 4 to 5 days with Ms. Baker?
Well, yes, she would come by. Yes.
Okay. And you would go to her house too. Isn't that right?
Yes. Yes.
However, towards the end of December 2000 and January 2001, Ms. Baker stopped visiting your home that often. Is that correct?
So we had less time together. Yes.
Okay. And we've already discussed law enforcement talking to you about the incident that happened the week before her death. Would you agree with that?
Asking the question, yes.
Okay. And you would also agree that the week before her death is when you decided to go back to your parents' home for work. Is that fair?
Just for work, not to move.
Okay.
But yes.
So I just want to make sure we're clear. So you didn't move away from Athens before Ms. Baker's death?
Correct.
Okay. So if anybody said otherwise, that information is inaccurate.
Correct. I have not moved.
And due to Ms. Baker's studying and your work, the last time you saw Ms. Baker was 10 days before she died?
Say it again.
It was 10 days before she died?
What was your full question?
Sure, I apologize. Due to Ms. Baker's studying, as well as your work, the last time you saw Ms. Baker was 10 days before she died.
Incorrect. The last time that I had stayed in Athens prior to her death would have been the Wednesday prior, but I saw her the weekend prior to her death.
And you saw her at your apartment?
No, she was at my parents'. She came by my parents' house.
And I noticed before you ask questions, you look over here. Is anybody communicating anything to you while you're on the stand?
No, sir.
Now, let me ask you about the question in regards to the 10-day window. You would agree that when law enforcement met with you, you told law enforcement in 2024 that you were certain it had been 10 days since you last saw Ms. Baker. Would you agree with that?
I stated that in confusion, yes, sir.
Okay. But you stated it. It was in confusion, but you stated it.
I stated it.
Okay. And Miss Elizabeth Bigham told you that she had your DNA. Is that right?
At some point, yes.
And she told you that because of the DNA that she had of yours, it could not have been 10 days. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Bigham also told you that they need to be able to explain away your DNA. Is that right?
Correct.
And in response to let me ask this question the right way. In response to Ms. Bigham telling you that she needed to explain away your DNA, you continued to tell her that, no, I'm certain it's 10 days since I last saw Miss Baker. Is that right?
I started reflecting, and I do recall being with Tara the weekend before. I have always stated from prior to that I was with her the weekend before. Time had gone by, and confusion started setting in, and I was reflecting on the last time I had stayed in Athens. But indeed, Tara had come to my house that weekend.
But you didn't say that you had seen her that weekend until Miss Bigham told you that you said that you saw her that weekend back in 2001. Is that right?
That's correct. And other times beyond. Yes, sir.
And Miss Bigham told you that your DNA was found in Miss Baker's mouth. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And she told you the DNA doesn't last that long in her mouth. Is that right?
Correct.
She told you all of this information before you said that, hey, I remember now, I saw Miss Baker the weekend before she passed away. Would you agree with that?
Correct, I would say.
But one thing that you were adamant about with Miss Bigham that she couldn't get you to change, you said, I did not see Tara Baker the week of her death. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I want to make sure we're clear for the record. You didn't see Miss Baker on Monday. Is that right?
Correct.
It's undisputed that you didn't see Miss Baker on Tuesday. Is that correct?
Correct.
It's undisputed that you didn't see Miss Baker on Wednesday. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it's undisputed that you didn't see Miss Baker on Thursday.
Correct.
Okay, and it's undisputed that you didn't see Miss Baker, you would say you didn't see Miss Baker on Friday.
I think it's undisputed.
So we have Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Monday. So we'll say at least 5 days, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you told Miss Bigham that the closest time, for the first time, that you believe you saw Miss Baker last or had sexual intercourse with Miss Baker last was the Sunday before she left. Is that right?
Sounds accurate, yes.
Okay. And that was the first time in 24 years that you ever told law enforcement that you had sexual relations with Miss Baker on Sunday.
I think in the past I'd said it in the weekend, and we had sex on Saturday, and then I'm sure that I believe that we had sex on Sunday. It's just, yes.
That's a yes to my question?
I would say yes.
So if you're, I won't ask that question. So at the time of Miss Baker's death, you stated today, I believe, that you and Tara, well, I'll ask you, how long had you and Tara been dating at the time of her death?
Again, that would be 2.5 years.
Not 3.5 years?
2.5 years.
Not 3.5 years?
From 2.5 to, I think our 2-year anniversary was the July 4th prior. I believe that we considered us actually a couple.
Okay.
Yes.
So we'll say 2.5 years. So in 2 years, 2.5 years, within that 2-year window, you moved to Athens to be near her. We've agreed on that. Is that right?
Correct.
You helped her move into her Deer Park apartment. Is that correct?
Correct.
And at the time she moved into her Deer Park apartment, is it fair to say that you two were in a serious relationship?
Correct.
But Ms. Baker didn't choose to move in an apartment with you. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The day before Ms. Baker died, you would agree that you two spoke 5 times.
Sounds right.
And we've agreed for the past 20 years, you've stated court's indulgence. Now, Mr. Melton, we've already agreed that in 2001, you were advised that Ms. Baker was sexually assaulted. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, you heard it, you testified to it. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay, now you do recall also meeting with GBI again on May 5th, 2024. Is that right?
That's correct.
And during the May 5th, 2024 interview, you were told that someone else's DNA was found in Ms. Baker's mouth. Do you remember that?
That's correct.
Okay, and is it, you were told that it was the bad guy's DNA. Is that right?
That's correct.
You were also told by law enforcement that they did not intend to arrest you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And they told you that they needed your help explaining away your DNA. Is that right?
They were trying to have an understanding of why the DNA was in their mouth, or was in Tara's mouth. So, ask your question again.
Sure. They told you they needed you to explain, they needed to be able to, let me rephrase it. They were asking you to help them explain away your DNA or why your DNA would be present in her mouth.
Yes.
Now, when they told you that there was another DNA profile in Ms. Baker's mouth, your response is,
Can we approach, please?
You may.
it's a little bit more to this.
Oh, okay.
All right, so we've agreed that you were aware that Ms. Baker was sexually assaulted in 2001, right?
Correct.
Okay. And despite this knowledge of her being sexually assaulted at the time of her death, your response was, I'm kind of stunned. I'm hearing there's two people, me and somebody else.
There's further description of that. I think they say in her mouth. Yes.
Okay. You make that statement.
And when they said in her mouth, yes.
Would it be shocking that if someone was sexually assaulted by someone else, that they would likely have more than one DNA profile in them? Is that fair to say?
Judge, I'm going to object for calls for speculation.
I'm going to sustain that objection.
In your personal knowledge, okay, if someone, whether by choice or not, is intimate with two people, you would expect that two people would be present. Is that fair?
If somebody was sexually assaulted, and I'm thinking that if it's in the vagina and around, yes.
No. If it's in the vagina and what? Please finish that statement.
Right. What question was asked? Well, actually, how can I have full explanation of the thoughts that are going through my head at that moment?
If I can ask you this, can you answer my question first, and you can explain anything you need to explain?
Fair enough.
Is that fair?
Just restate your question, please.
So I think we agreed on the point that you said you were kind of stunned. I'm hearing that it's two people, me and somebody else. We've agreed on that, right?
Yes.
And my follow-up question was, based on your personal knowledge, if someone is sexually assaulted by someone other than yourself, you would expect two people to be present. Is that right?
I would say yes, but I do have further explanation of my statement.
Sure. You were asked about your sexual history with Ms. Baker. Is that correct?
When can I continue? When can I continue to?
So I can't answer questions. The Honorable Court has only given me authority to ask questions.
Didn't mean to look that direction. I apologize.
But the question I have for you, you have previously described your sexual relationship with Ms. Baker. Is that correct?
Yes.
And that did not include anal intercourse.
That's correct.
And when investigators interviewed you on May 5th, you understood the importance of being truthful. Is that right?
That's correct.
And you understood, and you told them that you and Ms. Baker never, ever engaged in anal sex. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And then just a couple of more questions for you, Mr. Melton. I thank you so much for your patience. During direct examination, you talked about items on your hands. I believe you said it was plumber cement, it was solvent. What were the items that were on your hands when you met with police?
When do I get to go back and talk to refer to the previous question that you had?
So the Honorable Court has only given me authority to ask questions. After this hearing, you and I can discuss it if you would like.
And I not have an explanation to an answer? Do I have the opportunity to explain a statement? If I'm not, I'm assuming I'm granted that. I'm not sure about the order of the questions that he's stating that Liz and Jeremy had asked me, the order, okay?
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive to any question that I asked. No question involved the order of questioning
Okay.
by investigators.
Well, the reason,
Right, hang on just a second. What was your question again, Mr. Cruz?
I believe the question, and Mr. Melton can correct me if I'm wrong, that he would like to follow up on was the question in regards to his statement, I'm kind of stunned. I'm hearing there's two people, me and somebody else. And I believe he mentioned about it being in her mouth, and I think he wanted to follow up on that, Your Honor.
All right, well, witnesses are allowed to explain their answers if they answer yes or no. Why don't you ask that question again and see if you get the yes or no question, and if this witness would like to explain his answer, he may do so.
Sure, absolutely. And despite knowing that Ms. Baker was sexually assaulted for 23 years, when you were told that somebody else's DNA was found in her body, your response was, I'm kind of stunned. I'm hearing there's two people, me and somebody else. Is that correct?
correct. Okay, with the explanation. When Liz, they tell me, not that it's in her body, they tell me specifically that it's in her mouth. Okay? In my mind at that point, I'm not accurate about DNA and so forth, timing and so forth, but there was just a short fraction moment of a time, and if I can request to even play that section of the audio, that for just a moment, I was taking consideration that I say was this voluntary? Because why in the world would she not bite his penis? If somebody's trying to do that, why would you not bite his penis? And that's what I was expressing. And I was in shock that it was in her mouth, because for just a fraction of a moment, it kind of went through my head. I was like, was something happening there that I was unaware of with Tara? And I'm ashamed to even think that for a second. And then Liz responds, "Don't let your head go there."
Objection, hearsay.
It's on the audio recording.
Rejection. That objection.
That's sustained, Mr. Melton, so you can't mention what anybody else said. I would like to follow up on this.
Okay. Yeah.
On the hearsay objection, Mr. Cruz in this line of questioning has specifically mentioned the words that the GBI agents are saying back and forth to Mr. Melton. So I think as it relates to the rule of completeness in this line of questioning, Mr. Melton is allowed to talk about that because of the fact that Mr. Cruz has opened the door to it in his line of questioning.
Would you like to respond to the objection about the rule of completeness?
I would. So the purpose of my questioning was the objective effect on the listener. So it wouldn't apply as hearsay because they give him information or they make a statement to him. The most important portion of it isn't what's said to him. We aren't offering that for the truth of the matter. We're offering it to the jury for his response. So anytime that I've mentioned something from GBI, it's either been a question that was asked, which is not hearsay because it's not a statement offered for the truth, it's a question, or two, the objective effect on Mr. Melton in regards to how did he respond to that information. The rule of completeness, from what I understand, applies to documents, videos, things that if you only play a portion of it or show a portion of it, it wouldn't put it into context. Now, if the state would like to, well, I won't get into that, but that's my understanding of the rule of completeness. Right now, we're just going through his testimony with non-hearsay statements from law enforcement.
Okay, I'm going to withdraw my former comment that it is hearsay. Both parties have agreed that it is not hearsay. I'm going to allow you to complete your statement. Go ahead.
All right, back to what I was saying.
Your Honor, I didn't agree that his statement wasn't hearsay. His statement was hearsay as far as what Ms. Bigham said. I was explaining my statements.
Well, I'm going to allow him to say
Yes, ma'am.
however you characterize it. I'm going to make a finding that both parties have said it's not hearsay. I'm going to allow you to continue explaining if you choose to do so.
Yes, ma'am, I'd like to continue. There was a moment when, I'm going to have to back up just a touch, I guess, but I hear that there's semen in her mouth. I'm expecting it in other places of her body, but in her mouth, I was like, how did she not bite this person? And for just a moment, I was like, was this voluntary? And then I was going the wrong thoughts in my head, and Liz picked up on that also, and she stated something that was beyond my realm of consideration, and she says, that's if Tara was still alive.
You were in her mouth too, is that correct?
It's the DNA, you're saying, yes, the DNA was located.
Okay.
That's what I've been told.
And I just want to make it very clear for the jury. When you met with law enforcement on May 4th, 2020, May 5th, 2024, you understood that your DNA was in Ms. Baker's mouth.
That's what I was told.
Last question I have for you, I want to talk about your hands a little bit. Did you state you punched the wall 30 times?
I stated that I couldn't remember how many times I'd punched it, but I was just guesstimating.
Okay. But you stated that you punched it so hard that shingles were falling off the house?
No, that I was hitting the at some point when I came through, I know I hit the siding.
Okay. Did you mention that you were hitting concrete and things of that nature?
Sir?
Did you mention that you hit concrete? Did I hear
Well,
that?
that's what the siding was made of.
Okay, so you were punching through the wall and hitting concrete.
Yes. And I remember I remember punching through and feeling the other side. Yes.
Okay. You would agree that you never told law enforcement that you sought medical treatment for your hands. Is that correct?
That's correct. I never did.
Okay. And you would also agree that you didn't break any bones in your hands. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. You also agree that the injuries to your hand were scratch-like injuries. Is that right?
There were scratch-like injuries on my hand. Yes.
I think we established this. This is my last point. And I believe we've already talked about this and we've agreed on it maybe multiple times. But your hands were covered in work supplies when you went to meet with law enforcement, right?
Yes, I believe there was primer and maybe some glue that was on my hands.
You also mentioned cement as well, plumber cement, I think you stated.
Plumbing cement as possibility. I wasn't completely accurate of all this, but it's primer I know that sticks to your hands, and then there's probably little pieces of adhesive.
Okay, and I want to ask you something that's very interesting to me, and this is my last question for real.
Mm-hmm.
You refer to the officers by their first names. How many times have you met with them before this trial took place?
That's how they always introduce themselves.
My question is, how many times did you meet with them before this trial?
Before this trial?
Hmm?
When they interviewed me?
Okay. How many times?
I think I've had a total of 5, 6 interviews, I guess.
And that includes with the prosecutors as well?
As far as with the prosecutors, maybe 2.
Okay, so they've met with you a total of 7 times, but they told you that your DNA was present in Ms. Baker's dead body. Is that right?
You talking about Liz and
Correct.
Jeremy?
Correct.
When they interviewed me?
Correct.
They said my DNA was also there, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Melton. I have no other questions for you.
Any redirect, Mr. Yeoman-Chili?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly. Mr. Melton, I've got just, one, well, I'm not going to call it one question. It might turn into a couple, but just one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because there's been some testimony about this incident between you and Tara, but there hasn't been any testimony about what that incident was. Can you explain to us, what it is that happened and what this disagreement that y'all had? And I believe you testified it was the only disagreement that you could necessarily recall that was ever serious. What was it?
Just bear with me. There was a time that Tara took care of me. I had gotten an infection. I had cellulitis that had entered my body through my thighs and through my buttocks on a job site late summer. Late summer, I remember it being hot. I had been shaved. I was on a new job site. I'm sitting on the soil installing plumbing. Well, during that time, evidently bacteria that had been in the soil entered through my clothes, entered my skin, and got me infected. That same day, later that evening, Tara was at my house, and she saw the effects it was having upon my body. And I'd swollen up in between my thighs and my legs, and my skin started turning black. She told me, "You need to go to the emergency room." She took me to the emergency room. Once that was taken care of there, I had to come back to my place, and I could not walk or move around for a long period of time, possibly up to, if I can recall, 2 weeks. Okay? During that time, Tara was my caretaker. That's when she was given a key to get in and out because I could not go up and down the steps without having her come in to take care of me. Well, time goes by. Now I'm at the end of this, and I've healed up, and I'm ready to go back to work. So she has stayed over. She stayed behind that morning to show herself out. Once I had gone to work, she had called me and said, "We need to talk." And I was like, "Okay." Well, she said she would meet me back at the house, meet me back at my place. While I was gone, what she had found, I had a TV armoire with VHS tapes. And as embarrassing as it is, and this is something I had since I was 19 from back in college, she found an adult video. It wasn't anything crazy. It was just one video in bright orange, I might add, so it wasn't concealed. It was just there. That hurt her feelings. She felt so disrespected. I was ashamed. I was embarrassed. I can't even quite remember the last time I had even seen it, but I was still in possession of it. She sat down in that argument, and she demanded, when did you come in possession of this? And then I further explained that when we were in college, back, I guess I'm 19 at this time, one of the cheerleaders was actually marrying another cheerleader. It was a man and a woman that had been partners for a while, and they actually were getting married. Well, there was a bachelor party that didn't have anybody, no females show up or anything, but they had this adult video playing on the TV during that crazy little bachelor party guys kind of thing. Well, that's how I obtained it, because I asked the host, I was like, "Hey man, you mind if I have the tape?" I was not in a relationship or anything at the time. I'm ashamed to say that, embarrassed. But when she found that, I felt like I broke her heart. That was not who she was, and I hope it's not a representation really of who I am. I was a young man. She found that tape, and that was the only time that I can ever recall that she raised her voice at me. And she demanded that I destroy the tape and throw it in the dumpster by my apartments with her hands on her hips, watching me. And I did. And we agreed, and I talked it out, and I laid everything out for her as she asked, and I was laying all my cards on the table. I was honest with her. She chose to show me grace, and she was understanding, and we made up that same day and in that evening, okay? But that always stayed in the forefront of my mind as the time that I could have jeopardized our relationship. And I've always shown her respect, and I didn't realize I was showing her disrespect in that fashion at that time, but she made it clear that that was inappropriate and that I should never do that again, and I agreed. And that's the incident that I explained to law enforcement when they asked me, is there ever a time that's what I hear. Is there ever a time that you have jeopardized your relationship? And that's what I tell them. I tell them that story. And that's the context of where that answer came from.
Judge, I don't have any other questions for Mr. Melton.
Any requests, Mr. Cruz? Go ahead.
Mr. Melton, you've gone to Ms. Baker's house with her before, right? We've agreed on that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you've seen, it's fair to say that you would see her take out her key and unlock the door. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So you would know what her house key looks like. Is that correct?
I guess it looks like a house key. Yes, sir.
And you would agree if you showed up to Ms. Baker's house unannounced, she would probably let you in. Is that right?
If I showed up to her house unannounced and knocked on the door and she answered the door,
Correct.
yes.
No other questions?
Any redirect, Mr. Yamachili?
No, Your Honor.
May this witness be excused?
We'd ask that he is.
Any objection from the defense? You are free to go, sir.